Thanks for joining us, Don.
Thanks for having me.
We were just talking before you came on about what a sort of great classic television career you had. Birmingham to St. Louis to Chicago to New York. It's like it's the great 20th century arc of a great television broadcaster. And I guess
Yeah.
I'm curious at what point you thought, oh, like things are changing so much that I may not end my career this way. Like when did you start to think maybe I should be doing my own thing, independent?
Well, it's interesting that you say that because my first stop was actually New York City as a production assistant, a news trainee at the Fox station in WMIW. But Kara Swisher reminded me that a year or so before I left CNN, maybe even 2 years before I left CNN, she asked me what was the next thing. And I said, maybe the Don Lemon channel, my own channel and my own network. So I think I started to think about it then. But since you bring it up, having had that sort of career where you had to start in, a small market and work your way up and make mistakes, this is pre-internet. I think I had the foresight to know that this is going to end because people had been predicting the demise of cable news and network news for such a long time. And finally, I saw it coming to an end when I realized, like, look at what's happening with social media. Look at these people who are in other mediums, who are other parts of the medium, and they are making great money. Look at the Joe Rogans of the world. And I just started thinking about what's next. And so, I never saw myself sort of as a traditional news person, even though I had the journalist chops. People were more interested in who I was. And I think that helped tell the news. They were interested in the news, but they were interested in who I was. They found me to be a very interesting person because I took a lot of risks. And sort of a personality, I think that was maybe more akin to a Fox News personality because I just said it. So yeah, I started thinking about it a couple of years before I actually left CNN.
You didn't leave voluntarily, but now that you're a few years kind of removed from that, what was the feeling that you were getting while you were there about CNN's kind of relationship to its audience? I mean, you see it now, the ratings for the shows are pretty bad. Take us inside what it was like to be at CNN as some of that stuff was happening. Did you get the sense like, oh my God, we're on, the ship is sinking in terms of audiences fleeing? At what point did you feel like, okay, maybe there are some people who are gone who just kind of aren't coming back, viewership was?
How honest do you want me to be?
Extremely honest. This is the venue for it.
I mean, but you guys have to remember, this is probably maybe news to you, but I'm still under contract for CNN for another year or so. So,
wow.
Yeah, so I have to be careful. That's why you haven't really seen me in many other places because I'm still under a non-compete. And so people are like, he can't get a job. He's not getting a job. I'm not looking. I can't. So I'm doing what I can do under the terms of my contract. So I saw it. I mean, honestly, after Jeff left, when they got rid of Jeff, I was like, it's over. Because whether you liked Jeff or not, he was a visionary. The folks there trusted him. He had great, trust and confidence in the newsroom, and which is the most important thing. And I thought that CNN Plus was not perfect, but it was a thing that was going to take us into the future, and that it would, however it started, that it would correct itself. At least it gave us a runway to be able to move into the new digital streaming age. And when Jeff left and that ended, I said, all right, it's over. And, when the move to the right, when they started saying they wanted to, and this is no secret because John Malone said it, on CNBC, I would like CNN to be more like Fox News. And so when they started trying to move to the right, which I think news is, you don't really move it. It is what it is. It's about truth. I said, this is over because they're gonna turn off their core audience, or we're going to turn off our core audience. And people are going to start tuning out faster because there's no payoff. And they won't soon recognize, there'll be little recognition about what network they're watching. They're like, wait a minute, what am I watching? So I think that's when I started to realize it. And there was very little, we went from, we love this guy, he's great, he's not perfect, but he's the perfect person to take us into the future because he protects us from the corporation and we can do our journalism and his office is open and whatever. And to people who are just afraid to even have conversations in their own offices because they thought they were being spied upon, or that the corporation would somehow hear it and they would lose their jobs. And people started to, how do I want to say this? Pull their punches on air. And that's when I thought, you know what? This is over, or it's coming to an end.
There's you mentioned Jeff. He, I think your old on-air friend, Chris Cuomo, was quoted recently saying that Zucker had told him he had to go on your show to mitigate whatever was going to come out of your mouth.
You know how that started? The handoff. The handoff started
in a bar over drinks
with Jeff Zucker telling me you've got to stay over onto his show to kind of help mitigate whatever was going to come out of his face.
Yeah,
I
believe it. I believe
Stop it. Yeah.
Well, Jeff and I are friends, and I see Jeff and talk to him weekly, sometimes, no, a couple times a week, not daily. So I have great affinity for Jeff, and and I asked him about that, and he just laughed and said, "Oh, that's really sad." So, but if you really think about it, it doesn't make sense that why would he have to come on my show when you're talking about the handoff thing that we did?
Yeah, the handoffs.
It would, if the shows were reversed, that would make sense, but it's not. It was for me to say, okay, Chris, thank you, goodbye. I could kick him off whenever I wanted to. So he had really no control over what I said or what came out of my mouth on my show, because he was not really a part of my show. He wasn't there.
I mean, you were there for one of the really great, strange television things that ever happened, which was the Chris COVID moment, which, and his brother's the governor. And it was so interesting. I wrote about it for the Times and basically wrote, is this the future of TV? This is so confusing. And then it really became a huge scandal after the fact. I'm curious, you're right in the middle of it. What did you think about that at the time? What do you think about it now?
It's so weird. I haven't talked about Chris in that, except not every once in a while. People remind me all the time, like, "Hey, oh my gosh, I miss you, and I loved you, and Chris, that was a moment. It was appointment television. I don't watch anymore." That's what I used to set my DVR to you guys to watch it. So just to go back, by the way, that whole handoff thing, and I think he said that on a podcast or something, right?
Yeah.
That whole handoff thing came about because when Jeff came to the network, he said one show would just go, everybody was in a silo. So we would just go from one show to the next without any interaction between anchors. And he told everyone, I want a handoff. So there was a handoff with Anderson to Chris. And I think there's a handoff from Aaron to Anderson, and then from Anderson to Chris. Or it was from Anderson to me, because Chris wasn't there the entire time. He came later. Chris was, came to prime time much later than I did, like maybe 5-6 years later. And so he wanted a handoff between shows. And I said, "Oh, you want a handoff? I'm going to give you a handoff." And so I said, "You know what? I'm going to talk to Chris. I'll give him shit and I'll make it really fun. And then I'll go on and do the news." So that whole idea about that lengthy handoff, that was my idea. That was me. And my producers would say, "Oh my God, Don, you're killing our A block. Go, move on. And then in my head, I was like, this is the highest rated point of the day on the network. Why are we running away from it just to get to a rundown? And so that was me doing that on my own. So I don't know what Chris is talking about. I just, I feel, whatever, good luck to him.
Do you feel you're a podcaster, you're a broadcaster, podcaster now? Streamer, exactly. You're kind of in that weird soup, with the rest of us these days. And, Chris is, making these kind of controversial comments, on another, kind of podcast. Do you think, I wonder if he feels the pressure to, say things that, get attention or, go viral or whatever. Do you ever feel that as a podcaster? Do you ever feel the kind of pressure to get attention in that way now that you don't have a slot on television every night to, where you have your audience locked in?
No. Not at all. I don't have to. People like to write about me, whether it's true or not. I've always been a lightning rod for that. I don't know why. Well, I do know why. It's easy, especially the New York Posts of the world or the Daily News or the conservative media. They write about me because it's easy. I'm black, I'm gay, I'm outspoken, and it makes great headlines. So I don't have to do that. And I'm kind of happy. It's kind of nice being in a place where the spotlight isn't on you 100% of the time, because usually the things that are important will come across more easily than the just sort of everyday minutia of someone writing about it on an industry website, which is gone in 2 minutes. So yeah, I don't feel that need, and I don't feel the need to do that. And the interesting thing is, when I'm on YouTube, I can see the audience right there. And some people I know, if you're doing a live stream, some people will sort of play into that audience to see what happens if you can increase it. But I just do the news. And just recently I did a story on, I had someone to come on to talk about jobs in the economy, and it was a new person, and I was a little bit nervous about, are they good for them? If it's too cable-y, which people don't want in streaming, they we can talk about that as well. We don't want cable news light. They say, we just want you. And, as the guy started talking, I did see that the audience was increasing. And I said, well, since we have the audience, why don't we ask him questions about, have the folks in the chat ask him questions and they can answer. And so you find easy ways to pivot into the information that is more beneficial to the subscriber or the viewer or the streamer or whatever it is, rather than, doing something that's hyperbolic just to get attention. There are enough people in this streaming business who do that, but that's not something I want to do. I've said before, I don't want to be, my Google searches to, when people look at it, to be Don Lemon calls out this person, Don Lemon calls out that person, Don Lemon calls out that person. And if you look at some of the people on the right, the conservatives who, have gained a foothold in this very early on in the streaming arena, that's what it is. Megyn Kelly has made a business out of being a troll and a racist. And good for her, but that's not something that I want to do.
Well, we're actually technically, I don't know. I mean, listeners of our show know that we are, I guess, technically still involved in a beef as well with Megyn. Well, you specifically are.
I mean,
Ben.
I've been trying to surrender unilaterally, but I'm not cut out for this stuff. But Don might be making it worse. But Don, will you
Can I just say this? I did not talk about. I just ignored her for the longest time because that's sort of what she wants or wanted. But then after a while, it sort of got to me, after the Joy Reid thing, and she was just so rude, and she would say things about me, and I just would not respond. People would send them to me, and I'm not getting in the dirt with her. You lie down with dogs, you get fleas. So finally I had to call her out for, her misogyny, her racism, her trolling people, her internet. If you do a search on Megyn Kelly, it's always Megyn Kelly calls out this person, Megyn Kelly calls out that person. Now, she's doing it, but also there is a press, I'm sure she has a PR person behind her sending people notes saying, look, Megyn Kelly called out this person today. You want to write about it, at least in the beginning. I'm sure that's what happened. So, and that was it. And then now I'm done with it, unless she does something else that's egregious. But I think it was important to do that.
Well, in Megyn's defense, I think she's reasonably equal opportunity. She definitely, I had my turn over the barrel recently.
One of the first things that you did after you left CNN was a partnership with Elon Musk. Didn't last very long. You had an interview with him, which was an honestly incredible interview, and one of the few that he's done in recent years. And that relationship fell apart. You're currently involved in a legal battle with him. What's the latest on that? And are you guys? Is your side going to depose him? What's the latest on that battle?
I suggest that you contact my legal representation to discuss that. Yes, I mean, there's no secret I'm in litigation with Elon Musk. I think in any, sort of lawsuit, I think, deposition would be on the table for anything, just in general. So yeah, of course, I think that we're working to that end. So what was that like? I mean, I actually don't really think about it that much. I went into this with the idea that, as always, is that I want to do what's right, regardless of what, the outcome may be or what other people will think about it. I need to do what's right for me and to sometimes set examples for the people who are coming behind me, which I think I've done before. So, but I really don't think about it that much on a daily basis, if at all, unless I get a note saying, hey, we did talk to you or there's movement on something. I don't really think about it.
I guess I'm curious, what did you learn from the experience? Aside from the sort of legal battle aside, did you misread him? Did you misread the whole situation?
I don't know. I mean, look, Look, I don't think that, obviously, I don't really have any regrets in my life at all. I think that things just happen. That's what they happen. And they happen, and you just have to deal with it. I can only speak for me. I went into it with, earnestly wanting to try to make a difference on a platform that I thought was a big, huge, important platform, especially as it relates to politics and the direction, especially of America. And I didn't think that platform or that territory we should cede that territory to, extremists on the right or the left. And so I went into it earnestly and with them saying, this is what we want you to do. You have complete editorial control. I said, at times I will have to discuss and even criticize the owner of this platform. If I can't do that, then I won't do this. Oh, absolutely. That's what he would want. That's what, we want. Great. Let's do this. Please do this. Please do this. They pursued me. I didn't pursue them. And so once Linda Yaccarino, and I said no. I had a conversation or two, I forget, with Elon Musk, and then I said, I'll just wait. And then Linda Yaccarino came, on board, and she had credibility from being in the business, and had a really great, a big job and big reputation, whether liked or not. But that's besides the point. And so I went into it thinking that I was getting into business with adults, and so that would keep their word and abide by the contract, implied or not, or whatever it was. And so that did not happen. And I did think that considering the platform and what people say on that platform and what they allow on that platform, that the people who ran that platform and the person who did would believe in free speech. A free speech absolutist means what? Freedom of speech. Being able to say whatever you want. Asking the tough questions, even to the owner of the platform. And that's what I did. Just because I went into a business deal with him, it did not mean that he owned me and that it would somehow change my integrity as a journalist. If I were to interview him or anybody else. I interview the president of the United States the same way, with the same respect that I interview the man on the street who I just walk up to with a microphone. And that's what you're supposed to do without fear or favor.
Even though that partnership didn't go the way that maybe you had hoped, it seems like you found an audience. One part of this interview that you did with Variety recently really stuck out, in which you said that if you kind of stay at the current trajectory that you're at, that you are probably going to make more money doing what you're doing now than you made at CNN. Talk about that. I mean, how much? What are we talking about here? How much money is it? And you were talking about. I will say, you mentioned Kara Swisher earlier. Kara came on this show and talked about how much money she made. So did Scott Galloway, her host, as well. But that is still pretty remarkable. What does that look like?
Well, good for them. I'm glad that they shared all of that with you. I never liked to talk about that, even when I was in legacy media. I didn't like to talk about my contracts or how much money I made, and people often write about it and, oh, you did this and you had a legal settlement or lawsuit. I never sued CNN. There was never a lawsuit. So don't believe everything you read. I'm sure you guys know that. However, if it continues on the current trajectory that I'm on now, I will eventually, I'm not saying it's going to happen this year or next year, but I will make more money than I made at CNN. And obviously I think I'll make more money because now the salaries are decreasing, right? In traditional media. But there are so many different ways to do it. When I was at CNN, I could only do universities with endowments or that kind of thing. I could not do corporate speaking engagements at all. Because of conflict of interest. And if I ever had to report on them, and I don't have to worry about that now, which is, I don't know if that's good or bad in this space. So I can take speaking engagements and get paid whatever I want. And I try to do it with integrity. Same thing with sponsors. Like, it takes a while, especially for people who are not on I call it the crazy manosphere broadcast right. It's hard to get sponsors because which is weird because they can operate without facts, and I try to operate, and many of us try to operate with facts, but they, for some reason, have the sponsors, and it's tough for folks like us to get sponsors. But the person who sells my advertising is like, well, congratulations, you are big enough that they cannot ignore you anymore. And so I have advertisers, I have sponsors, and I pick the ones I want. They send me if it's whether it is something that I eat or if it's a service or like Mint Mobile wants me. I test it before I put it on. So it's not like being in cable where I had never heard the commercials and they're selling some ED medicine or blood pressure medicine and I had no idea what it was. If I do an ad specifically for social media, that is monetized. If a company wants to use my likeness or an ad that I've read on the show on their social media, they have to pay me. So there are ways to make money here that people, aren't aware of because you're not in this space. I've learned so much. And, the frustrating thing for me is that people like you guys who are in sort of kind of legacy media, kind of not, like you write about legacy media a lot more than you write about the folks who are in streaming spaces when legacy media is falling off of a cliff. And you're like, why are you writing about those guys when the big influence is really, it's because it's easy. It's easy to get sound bites from cable because they're on all day. When, it's just, and I know because I've been there and I was there and I thought everybody was watching. And now I walk down the street and you know what people say? Hey, TikTok guy, I love you. Can I get a picture with you?
I will say in our defense, actually, and this is one of the things that's been a theme of our show and something that we like, and Ben and I have gravitated towards in our media coverage as well. We really are going towards what we feel like people are watching and consuming first, and that's put us behind on some stories. Like, I mean, we didn't compete as much on some of the Paramount stories. We haven't covered CNN or the cable networks as much, just because I think we try to follow what people who are in our world are talking about or what we're reading and consuming. And actually, I think it's been a really good guide for us too, because you're right. I mean, there are plenty of people who are out there who, when I talk to people out there in the world who are consuming stuff, they're like, have you listened to this new podcast? Did you see this guy on TikTok who I get my news from? And there's still obviously like New York Times and, some of these other larger institutions. But you are right. Like there is a hypocrisy in some media coverage in terms of, people who are saying, oh, these places are all declining and they're terrible, but they write about them every day. Right. Yeah. And like, that's not what we're trying to do here.
I mean, it's also very navel gazing because all the people in the media kind of write about each other. But what I will say to you guys is that, pay attention to us, some of the independent folks who are not crazy right or not crazy left and who are out here trying to at least, inject some facts into the streaming world instead of the people who are just screaming and calling people out and, bending the knee to the administration. And many journalists, especially independent journalists of color or minority journalists, we get ignored. We get ignored in the mainstream media and we get ignored in this, new digital media as well. I read there was a takeout on the Associated Press a couple weeks ago where there wasn't they didn't do one black, a streamer, a podcaster, and they included all these people. And they said, this person has 30,000 subscribers. I'm like, I'm closing in on 1 million subscribers. You couldn't pick up the phone to call me. Nobody from the Associated Press decided to call me. No one called Joy Reid. No one called Jim Acosta. No one. And why? I don't know. But,
Yeah,
hey.
That is kind of interesting. I mean, is there some space for a center on YouTube? That would certainly be. That would be a new development. I mean, that's interesting.
I think there is, but I think that in order for that to happen, attention brings attention, right? So that's up to you guys who are also kind of in this, as you said, we don't know where we are, to pay attention to folks like us. Otherwise, we're in a silo,
Yeah. And then I guess on what you just said, I mean, just to put a point on it, do you feel like in this sort of post-2020 kind of anti-DEI backlash world that Black creators are getting, or just getting ignored in a different way? Do you think it's sort of part of that backlash moment? I wasn't sure if that's what you were trying to say.
No, but that's true. Yeah. I mean, we are. I mean, look at what people are doing. It's like, why do you want to get rid of diversity, equity, and inclusion? We look at DEI, I know this has been a cliche and it's been talked about, but the number one recipient and the people who benefit from diversity, equity, and inclusion the most are white women. And so, but if you think about what happens out in the zeitgeist in the world and with the Trump administration, you would think that diversity, equity, and inclusion, that means Black people are getting jobs that they don't deserve. And that's not actually what DEI does. But people don't write about it. But to me, I've been saddened by watching the industry that I was a part of not have a sharper editorial tone about things that are objectively bad and undemocratic. And the false equivalency that comes across. And it's just, sometimes I want to cry. I can't watch it anymore. I'm like, oh my God, what happened? What happened?
Yeah, I mean, I was at the Paramount press, and now we're talking about old media, but I was at the Paramount press conference, and they were asked a bunch of times, do you have a deal with Donald Trump? What's in the deal? And they just kind of no commented it, which is not what you say if there isn't a deal.
Yeah, and in many ways, it's not about the journalists. It's about the system that they are in. It's the corporation. And when I mentioned earlier that Jeff used to protect us from that, which is true, there aren't many news managers now who have those sorts of, that testicular fortitude to be able to do that anymore. They just don't exist. And look, but hey, people are looking out for their jobs. They want, they're ambitious. They want to be able to feed their families and have a career. I understand that. But I do think there should be some special dispensation if you're a part of a corporation for journalists and for journalism. And that doesn't exist anymore. It's sad.
Yeah, it's sad. Well, on that,
Ben, you wanted to end. We had a more fun question. This is
too sad to
depressing
end
as hell.
on.
Ben,
yeah,
you had a fun question you wanted to ask.
I don't know. It's fun, but I am curious. Like you're out there in the Hamptons with all the media bosses, all the money around media, spends the summer out there. What are you hearing? Like, what's the mood? What's the chatter out there?
Well, I think it depends on which media boss you're hanging out with. Because the ones who are bending the knee are happy because they'll be able to get their stuff done, and the ones who are who really had our backs as journalists, that's just I'm talking about the journalism part. It's like, wow, and very realistic about this. It is what it is, but also I happen to agree with some of the folks who have been in media and who still are, who believe, like I do, obviously people are cutting the cord, but I think because of what's happened and how the media has handled it themselves, that they've accelerated the process. People tuning out because there's no payoff, there's little integrity. That's what the audience feels. And they feel like they're being influenced too much by the corporation. And look at what's happened, the events that have unfolded over the last, couple of months or so, the lawsuits that are being settled and, the concessions that are being made. I think that's very factual. And so I believe if they didn't do that, if they actually hired people who were interesting more people who are interesting to watch, people love to watch people who are real, who are flawed, who are not, perfect, perfection is boring. And so if I watch someone who's just sitting on television and they're just like this, so well, let me get you to the whatever. Okay, now, all right, you decide and let's go to the commercial break and turn it off. So look at what's happening. The folks who are the most successful in this medium are people who are real, authentic, and who aren't afraid to be themselves.
Well, Don, thank you so much for being yourself, introducing us to the phrase testicular fortitude, and talking a little bit about the money and the Elon stuff. All that stuff is quite sensitive, but Don, we really appreciate it, man. Thanks for taking the time.
Thanks, and it's good to see you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks everyone for watching. Your support means the world to us. So make sure you hit the like button and you subscribe to our channel to make sure that you never ever miss a video. We're live every day, 10 a.m. Eastern time. We drop even more content at 2 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Eastern. And if you want more Don Lemon Show content, we'd love for you to become a member of the Lemon community, where you will receive access to special community posts. You'll get exclusive content and members-only live shows. So head over to our channel page or click the join button on this video. Again, thank you for watching. We appreciate your love and your support, and we will see you next time.